Who are the most untouchable prospects in the Mariners farm system? We asked our listeners to rank them, and we're going to go over the results today. We'll also talk about the Mariners' win last night and what they're doing with the rotation coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, June 13th, 2024. This is Titan Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We asked you on social media to rank the most untouchable prospects in the Mariners farm system. We're going to go over those results today. We'll also talk a little bit about the Mariners 2-1 walk-off win last night and discuss what they're doing with the rotation tonight and this weekend. It's pretty interesting. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals by calling 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. That's LOCKDON. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So the Mariners have won their series with the Chicago White Sox with a 2-1 walk-off win last night. The offense was dreadful against Jonathan Cannon. Not really anything to talk about on that front, but thank you, Luke Raley. Thank you, Mitch Haniger, for walking things off. But Bryce Miller was really good last night. What did you think about him, Colby?
Don't care. Didn't watch. Offense too painful.
Right. Colby was very irritated last night. I wish I could show you the text that I received over the course of that game.
It's Jonathan Cannon. I mean, you might as well have been perfectoed. It was the same result, essentially. So, yay, offense. Good job. Way to get 3 hits against a 4A starting pitcher. It's only the 3rd time in the last 3 weeks you've done that, so I guess that's progress. But yeah, so Bryce, obviously in desperate need of a bounce-back start after the calamitous, disastrous outing he had in Kansas City. And if you need a bounce-back outing, then Chicago's a pretty good team to have next up on the old schedule. So, overall, he looked pretty good. Interestingly enough, his stuff, not the best we've seen. It really wasn't. Velocity down across the board. Fastball was down 0.6 miles an hour. Splitter was actually down almost 2 miles an hour. Slider was down 1.5 miles an hour. And the cutter was down almost 2 miles an hour, 1.9 miles an hour to be exact. Spin rates on all of his pitches across the board were down. He only had 12 whiffs, which is not terrible, but not great on 51 swings. But he did use his fastball a ton. It was 53% fastballs. So 49 fastballs, which tells you 53%. He really mixed up his other pitches because he threw 6 different pitches in this game, according to StatCast. 53% fastball. The other 5 pitches, only one of them broke 11% in terms of usage. 12% splitter, 11% sweeper, 10% sinker, 10% slider, and a couple cutters. He had 12 whiffs. 11 of them were on the 4-seam fastball. So 33% whiff rate on the fastball is really good. That's a really good number. But not a ton of whiffs on anything else. The only other pitch he got a whiff on was actually the slider. Only 12 called strikes in them. So, 25 foul balls. Chicago definitely trying to be aggressive. It's not an unusual game plan for a team to try and be aggressive against Miller because he throws his fastball a ton. But yeah, Bryce, he was pretty much cruising the entire night. He was out of the middle of the plate, which leads me to wonder, perhaps the velocity being down was by design, just to, try and have some better feel and command and control, because he was on the edges of the plate all night. He worked all the quadrants, 7 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, just 5 hard hit balls. Like, it doesn't really matter how the stuff looked. If that's the stat line you put up, you had a pretty good night, even if it was against the Luis Robertless, Chicago White Sox B lineup, which I mean is saying something, but it is what it is, right? I mean, that's not Bryce's fault. But yeah, he was really aggressive, went after guys, was on the corners most of the night. just fastball and then just kitchen sink after that. And the fastball was really pretty good, and everything else was, but he located well, and he had an inferior opponent, and that's how you get deep into this game, and that's how you shove. And they needed it. They really needed, at least 6 out of Bryce. He gave him 7, might have gone 8, using 92 pitches. They might have considered pushing him there, but this is a team that will, after Sunday, have played 30 games in 31 days. So very clearly, as evident by what they're doing today, which we'll talk about in a minute, this is a pitching staff that is running on some fumes a little bit, it
Sure.
seems. So, for Bryce to go 7, really try and, make it as easy as possible on the bullpen. Fortunately, the offense didn't cooperate. It was a really good outing for Bryce. There's really not really anything to complain about. If I had to guess the velocity being down, the spin being down, I think that's just a guy who's, tired. And his next start will come with an extra day's rest. And then I think the way the schedule is looking, his next one after that also comes with an extra day's rest. So schedule's finally lightening up, not so much in terms of opponent, but just in terms of breaking up the days off. Again, 30 games in 31 days. And then what was the other 51 games in 54 days? That streak will finally come to an end here after Sunday. So, I think Bryce is just a little bit tired, but his command was excellent last night. His control threw plenty of strikes, and Chicago fouled off a bunch of pitches, but very few balls were put in play that would result in any real danger to Bryce. So it was a really good outing for Miller.
So Bauman gave up the game-tying home run in the 9th, of course, but we actually did see a couple of really good outings out of the bullpen as well. Trent Thornton was awesome to hold things down there in the top of the 10th and keep the White Sox off the board to give the Mariners a chance to just score that automatic runner with relative ease. And then Austin Voth was pretty sick out of the bullpen too. 3 strikeouts in the 8th inning for Voth, who continues to quietly be one of the Mariners' better options out there, which partly says more about the state of the Mariners bullpen, but also Voth has been legitimately good this year.
A few hiccups here and there, but yeah. Last night in particular, 12 pitches, 6 swings, 5 whiffs, 3 called strikes, 67% called strike plus whiff rate. That's good. 83% whiff rate. That's good. And it's really kind of cutter, sweeper, and then sometimes it's cutter, curveball. Sometimes he'll evenly split all 4 of his pitches. So yeah, Voth's been a fun little, revelation. He's a perfectly good middle guy who can, come in to finish out like the 6th and then pitch the 7th. He can do that role. He can get you 4 outs on a pretty consistent basis. He's basically, another Trent Thornton. And if those guys were in their proper roles, then the Mariners would have a really good bullpen. Unfortunately, they're being asked to step up the type of roles they need to pitch in, and they're not good enough that's like no problem for them. So the Mariners have, the middle of their bullpen pretty well figured out. They just don't have the high leverage arms to push those guys to the middle, which is where they need to be.
Mariners looking to mop up the White Sox tonight. It was supposed to be Luis Castillo. However, it's going to be Emerson Hancock, as the Mariners are deploying an interesting strategy with their rotation. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks and Policygenius. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you're locked in. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. So get in on the daily action with your friends and become a part of the PrizePicks community today. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Choosing the right life insurance policy is a very important and overwhelming decision, and you want to be able to feel fully confident making that decision. Now you can with Policygenius, which is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options even offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Plus, your life insurance policy through your work may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team, and there are thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs through Policygenius. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. You can catch the final game of the series between the M's and the White Sox tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So, again, it was supposed to be Luis Castillo tonight. Instead, it's going to be Emerson Hancock. So the Mariners are going to deploy Jonathan Diaz and Emerson Hancock in the same series. And they're going to have a chance to sweep in 4 games, which at the very least is partly due to just how bad the Chicago White Sox are. They are now, 17-53 after the Mariners win last night, or 17-52, whatever it is. They're really bad. That's the point. But yeah, so the Mariners very clearly wanted to set things up here where they're going to have Luis Castillo, George Kirby, and Logan Gilbert face the Texas Rangers over the weekend for what is essentially the biggest series of the season so far. This also, though, more importantly, pushes Brian Woo's spot out of Sunday. And because they don't play on Monday, that gives them another extra day to kind of figure things out with Woo, who maybe he starts on Tuesday. Maybe they just skip that spot in the rotation. How do you feel about all of that?
Yeah, it makes a tremendous amount of sense, especially after you clinched the series last night. It would have been interesting to see if they would have tried this had they lost the game last night. So, I mean, you don't want to go and kick games like ever. But, Garrett Crochet is the pitcher who, in theory, should give you the hardest time. But apparently we didn't account for Jonathan Cannon, Cy Young candidate, to arrive last night. Yeah, Hancock, you have the series in hand. Would have been great if Texas would have lost last night. Then you could have, even if you lost this game, you still would have had a net positive gain on them, blah, 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 whatever. But, I do think some of this is, hey, like we can do this now. Not only does it buy us an extra, another extra day with Woo, but it also gives our 3 best guys a extra full day rest between starts against, the team that's chasing us right now in the division. So like, there's a lot of positives to this. There's very little downside. And that's, part of the reason why I brought it up a few days ago is just like, I mean, they could look at this and they can go, look, we don't know Brian Woo is going to be ready on Sunday, and we don't want, Hancock or Diaz to start against the Rangers, but we're fine with one of them, as it turns out, both of them starting against the White Sox. And now we can also push our guys, we can push our guys to the big series or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
On an extra day's rest. So they should be even sharper than they normally would be. And then all those guys get another extra day's rest in their next start. Whereas, that's if Woo starts on Tuesday. If he doesn't start on Tuesday, that's fine. You're still in the right you're still in the right lineup. Like Bryce Miller can still start on his normal rest on Tuesday, if need be. So, it was all win. Like they really couldn't see a reason not to do it. And in addition to all of that, after his start today, in theory, now this will probably depend on how Woo's feeling, but in theory, you could send Hancock back down and call up an extra bullpen arm for the Texas series.
Yep.
So there's a lot of positives to making this move right when they did. It's, again, you get your best starters an extra day's rest against your division rival. You push Woo start from Sunday to Tuesday, so he gets another full day rest in between, makes him more likely to be ready to go. And also, because you can do this, now you have a guy with options you can send down and you can call up a bullpen arm. Maybe you want the extra lefty against, Corey Seager, and then maybe you just want just an extra arm in general, just to have in case one of the games gets away or one of the games goes into extras or whatever. So it's really, there's no downside to doing this. I don't love their odds to win tonight, but again, they won the first 3. regardless of how they did it, they did it. So they kind of have this little, I don't want to call it a bonus game, but they kind of have this little,
And the White
little
Sox, they find ways to lose.
right. And so, and also it's not a foregone conclusion that Hancock's going to pitch terribly. We remember what he did in the first month. He was down in Tacoma. He was fine in Tacoma. Like,
Look at you giving
He
Emerson
can-
Hancock some credit.
yeah, he's a number 5 starter, just like Jonathan Diaz, and Diaz managed to survive, so Hancock can too.
Sure.
It's really not that difficult of a thing to do. You pitch around Luis Robert, and you have a shot. So, we'll see what Hancock can do. Obviously, the bigger concern here is, can you score any runs off of Garrett Crochet? And then
Do you have to? Can you
I
just
was
get
going to
to
say
the
the
bullpen?
secondary question is there. Can you get him out of the game early enough that the bullpen, can get to work, and can it be close enough that your bullpen also doesn't have to be shut down for 4 innings?
Right.
Because none of those things seem likely. So,
Sure.
yeah, it's really a smart move. It's a savvy move. It helps just about everybody you can think of, and I think the entire thing is set up by the Mariners winning the first 3. If they had lost last night, I don't know if they try this. I think
they still will.
they might have, because
Yeah.
again they value the Texas series more. But yeah, this is just about making sure your 3 best guys are all pitching in the same series. But the added bonus of pushing Woo from Sunday, or Woo slot from Sunday to Tuesday, is pretty massive, especially if you're still not 100% sure that Woo's going to be ready to go.
Yeah, I think the Woo situation had more of an effect on this than them winning these first 3 games. I think it's just like that kind of created the window there. Like, hey, here's another added benefit of pushing everyone back a day, because we have his spot slated for that Sunday start. We don't want Jonathan Diaz. We don't want Emerson Hancock based on the Texas Rangers. So let's move that back, and let's go with our 3 best guys and try to not necessarily bury the Rangers, but push them down the standings even further.
Give it a shot. And like you said, that also means all 3 of those guys get an extra day's rest before their next start as well.
Yeah.
So 2 turns through the rotation where your 3 best guys are pitching on 5 days rest instead of 4 days rest.
Yeah. So I love the move. I love the move. I think it makes a lot of sense.
It's good for Woo. It's good for the other pitchers in the rotation. It's good for your chances against Texas. And it's just really not a down. It's good for Emerson Hancock too. Yeah. It's another start at the big league level. So
yeah, I'm interested to see him, because we talked about this before Woo came back. Like, over his last 4 or 5 starts, we started to see little wrinkles in each of Hancock's start, and we started to see a little bit of progress being made. I want to see what he looks like now that he's gotten a chance to work on some things down in Tacoma.
Started throwing the slider a little bit harder. He's got good results on that. Was getting whiffs on fastballs, which is not something that is a part of his profile, or shouldn't be. It's a very mediocre fastball, but he started to get some whiffs on that in his last few starts, particularly up in the zone. So it'll be interesting to see if Hancock has implemented any of those changes. It's going to be difficult to know for sure based off of 80 pitches or whatever. But one thing that does need to happen tonight is Hancock needs to find a way to get through probably 6, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to gas out your bullpen the day before the series starts. So, this might be a game where even if Hancock doesn't have it and he's struggling in the 3rd, sorry, tough it out.
And we'll see if they want to use Munoz tonight, or maybe they want to try and preserve him for the weekend.
Yeah, it's the rest versus rust thing that we talk about all the time in postseason, in postseason sense. It's like, do you want to be well rested and run the risk that he's going to have a bad outing because he hasn't been on the mound in a week and a half? But or do you want to burn him in a game that, not that it doesn't matter, but isn't as consequential as the next 3 after this? So we'll see. But I think the injections, they usually take a day or 2 for the stiffness to kind of leave. And so he might be down today. And also, is Ryan Stanek down today? He might be, because obviously he wasn't available yesterday, and they've ridden him pretty hard over the last few weeks. And so giving him back-to-back days off in preparation for the Texas series could be something that they consider.
Well, and they're short in the bullpen right now, because DeGus went down today for Hancock. So they only have 7 guys out there, including Munoz, including Stanek.
Right. So if they want to try and stay away from Stanek, and they want to try and stay away from Munoz. And by the way, Bauman, Saucedo, Voth, and Thornton all pitched last night. So
Yeah.
it's a good chance you're going to see Edward Pizzardo in this game.
Yeah.
Yay.
We'll see how it goes. So we're going to switch gears now and talk about untouchable prospects in the Mariners farm system. We asked you guys to fill out a survey for us and rank the untouchable prospects from most to least in the Mariners farm system. We'll go over those results in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Mariners, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. That's 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked on. See the link in this episode description. Before we get back into the show, I want to tell you about an upcoming event this Sunday at T-Mobile Park to support a great cause. The Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence is partnering with the Mariners for the 28th year to host a Refuse to Abuse Game Day, raising awareness around efforts to prevent domestic violence and promote healthy, respectful relationships. Purchase a ticket to join 1,000 Mariners fans in the Special Reserve Game Day section this Sunday against the Rangers. Tickets cost $35, with $18 of that going to the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And not only do you get to watch the game, you also get a Mariners themed Refuse to Abuse dry fit t-shirt. For more information and the link to purchase your tickets on the Mariners website, please check out the description of this episode. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch the M's and the White Sox tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast of SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So, about a week ago, Colby put out a survey on our Twitter page asking you guys to rank the most untouchable prospects in the Mariners farm system. So now we have the results of that survey, and Colby's going to tell you them right now, and we're going to react to them.
348 respondents in this one. Bear with me. The graph that they provide is not great. I would have preferred a pie chart, but what are you going to do? So the most untouchable prospect, according to the respondents of this poll, is going to be Colt Emerson, who had 232 first place votes. Far and away.
Makes sense. Yep.
The number one. Number two is pretty interesting. So we had Cole Young, who's number two in most people's farm system or most people's ranks, had 25 votes as first place, most untouchable. Harry Ford had 16, but both of those guys finished behind Laz Montes, who had 37 first place votes, and Feldman Celestin, who had 31. So the most untouchable is Colt Emerson, followed by Laz Montes, then Feldman, then Cole Young, then Harry Ford. Those are the players who received the most first place votes, I should say. Second place, pretty interesting. Colt Emerson, 63. So basically 295 of the 348 respondents said Colt Emerson is either the most untouchable or the second most untouchable prospect. Cole Young had 59 second place votes. Harry Ford had 24 second place votes. Laz Montes had 86 second place votes. Johnny Farmelo had 9, and Feldman Celestin had 98. So, just based on this data right here that I'm looking at, obviously, I'm not going to read through every single bar of this thing, but based on the way I'm reading this, most first, second, third place votes, stuff like that, I would say it appears that the far and away the most untouchable Mariner by, I don't want to say all fans, but the fans who responded to this is Colt Emerson. And just kind of looking at the bell curve here and all that, I would speculate that the most untouchable prospects in Mariners fans' eyes. Colt Emerson, I would say Laz Montes, and
Mhm.
Felman Cellison are the top three. It looks like I would probably give fourth to Cole Young in this regard. Harry Ford very close. So those two kind of seem like they're interchangeable in most people's mind. I would say Johnny Farmel is probably strong fifth, though,
Yeah.
as most untouchable. Then it looks I would again just kind of reading the bar here. I would say Ty Pete, Aiden Smith, Tyler Locklear, and then Michael Arroyo. Far and away, the most 10th place votes, which means the prospect people are most willing to trade. Michael Arroyo had 161 10th place votes and 113 9th place votes. So, most tradable or second most tradable, in this graph by about 270 of the now 350 people who have responded.
Yeah. So I would say that the results pretty much went as I would expect. Just gauging the temperature of Mariners fans and kind of the discourse around the farm system right now. I know a lot of people love Laz Montes. Not really anyone talking about Michael Arroyo and Aiden Smith. I look at Michael Arroyo as kind of like the new Gabriel Gonzalez in the Mariners farm.
Mm-hmm. Or Edwin Arroyo.
Yeah.
Where it's like he's probably a secondary piece, unless you're acquiring somebody who's making some money like Polanco, in which case Gabriel Gonzalez can serve as the primary piece if the rest of the deal, because I think what the Gabriel Gonzalez trade and the Jorge Polanco trade. First of all, Gabriel Gonzalez would not be in my top 10 Mariner prospect right now.
Yeah.
And that is why it's okay to trade these prospects. It really is, because you're going to get new ones and they might supplant these ones that you trade away.
You got the draft coming up here in a month.
Yep. International free agency. The Mariners are expected to sign another monster 17-year-old. I think two actually, in this winter in the international class signing period. So yeah, obviously they develop very well as well. So there's going to be players that we're not even thinking about right now, or who are fringe top 10 guys who are going to really explode and they're going to jump up. So yeah, keep that in mind. Like Gabriel Gonzalez is a good one. Like he was a top 100 prospect, barely, probably shouldn't have been, but whatever, he was by quite a few lists. And the Mariners traded him, and people thought that was an overpay. And now we're looking at going, oh yeah, the Mariners farm system is totally fine. They don't need Gabriel Gonzalez, and he wasn't going to be top 10 anyways.
Right.
So keep that in mind if they trade like a Pete or a Arroyo, or even if they trade a Laz, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the type of player you trade those guys for matters greatly, but I think, Colt Emerson being far and away the near consensus number one guy in the org, not surprising. I would have Cole Young and Harry Ford ahead.
Let's do our rankings. Let's do our rankings here. So you would have Emerson 1. I would also have Emerson 1. Who's your number 2?
Because he's on the list, and I almost didn't put him on the list for this reason, I'd go Feldman, just because it feels like there's no way to actually properly value him.
Same. Again, unless a team views him essentially as Ethan Salas, I'm not trading Feldman Cellison.
Right, because I think there's a chance by this time next year, Feldman is like a top 50 guy or whatever, and people are like, oh my God, this kid's amazing. So
I just don't want to sell low on him while he's still just so young.
Right. And right now, if you trade him at all, there's a good chance you're selling low on him. So for me, he's number 2, almost by default. Like I almost didn't put him on the list because of that. Sure. But since he is on the list, since he is a consensus top 10 Mariners prospect, for me, he'd be 2, but it's kind of, cheating in a way.
Number 3, who are you going number 3? It's not going to be Laz for me. I think it's
Ford.
I'm heavily considering Johnny Farmelo here.
That's a good one. I mean, to me, you could have these next 4 guys however you want them.
Yeah.
It's Farmelo, Laz, Harry, or Young, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's however you want to rank those 4.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably go Harry Ford just because he's closer to the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he can catch, and that's super valuable.
Yeah.
But maybe because he can catch, that makes him so valuable in trade that, I can get more for him than I could for Farmelo. So I'd probably go Ford, Farmelo, Laz, and Cole Young. Like I really like Cole Young though, but
yeah, I think I'll go Farmelo. Yeah, I'll go Farmelo, Ford, Montes, Young,
Yeah.
and then Pete after that.
I'd go
Locklear.
Smith.
Oh, really?
I'd,
You have Smith at what, 7?
Smith 7, Pete 8.
Okay.
Uh, Probably Locklear 9, Arroyo 10.
Okay.
I like Aiden Smith a lot.
Yeah. I'd probably go Smith 9, Locklear, or Arroyo 10.
Mm.
But there's
Locklear
there's a
because you
lot
think
of
there's a
of
Lock,
interchangeability there.
sure.
Yeah.
Locklear because you think there's a good chance he's in the first base mix next year.
It's a vicinity thing. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
vicinity thing. Yeah, I'll be honest about it.
I think if a team really likes Farmelo, and there are going to be teams that have, I would not be shocked if there were multiple teams that have Johnny Farmelo as the best prospect in the Mariners system.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be shocked at that because the
Sure.
upside is insane there.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit nuts to have anybody over Emerson, but I would not be shocked if there were people in the game who are like Johnny Farmelo is the best prospect in the Mariners system. But yeah, to me, I'm part of the reason why Farmelo's not number 2 or 3 for me is because Aiden Smith. I feel like I've got a guy like Aiden Smith. Like if Farmelo's here, I think Aiden Smith is like here, and they can both get to like here
Sure.
in a relatively short time. So that's why my interest in Aiden Smith makes me a little bit more willing to trade Johnny Farmelo.
So if you didn't participate in the poll, or even if you did, let us know your top 10. 1 being the most untouchable, 10 being the least untouchable, down below in the comments. That's going to do it for our show. Before we get out of here, though, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.